you, but you cannot lie to them.
Who knew that? Do you know that the police can lie to you?
Legally.
They can lie to you. They can say, hey, if you sign this, I'll let you go. And then you sign it, and then they take you in.
Yeah, they can do that.
Yeah. So they can lie to you to get a confession. They're taught in ways to get certain answers and responses from you. So again, don't say anything and keep that in mind. And the other thing that I want to say when we're talking about these nuanced situations, like, I'm not here to say all cops are bad, all cops are good. I'm not to say every citizen or person living in the US is all good or all bad, right? We're all human, right? And that's why this stuff happens. If everything was by the books, if we operated like computers with all these different rules that are in place and everyone followed all those rules, right? We wouldn't have crime and we wouldn't need enforcement for crime, right? So that's not the reality though. Like, we're humans, officers are humans, and so these encounters can go many different ways. So keeping that in mind as we go through this.
The job of the police is to coerce you into telling them what they want to hear in order to get an arrest. But you cannot lie to them. So in these situations, it's best to use your right to remain silent, or say, I will not speak to you without an attorney present, or simply ask, am I being detained or can I go? If you're being stopped in the street and they are asking you questions and you don't want to answer them, you can just say, am I going to be arrested or can I go?
And keep these phrases in mind because these are ways that you can talk and respond to the police without giving any information that could incriminate you. So again, am I being detained or am I free to go? Respectfully, I'm not going to speak to you without an attorney, a lawyer, a parent present. Use these phrases. And the other thing is broken record it. If they keep asking you questions, if they're being more and more aggressive, say the same thing, keep your cool. These situations are stressful, especially if someone else is getting escalated. It is within your right to not speak to them. It's also in that situation that warrants a response that you're like, I can't just sit here, they're getting upset because I'm not responding, I don't know what to do. Remember these phrases, am I being detained or am I free to go?
She said something that was important. She said they're trying to coerce a confession out of you. That means that they're gonna say whatever to scare you into giving a confession. There's a lot of people who gave confessions because they were scared, but they didn't even do it. So they sitting in prison right now because they gave a confession that they really didn't do.
And why? Because anything you say can and will be held against you in the court of law. So again, you have the right to remain silent. That is within your right. You have the right to not incriminate yourself. Perfect. Okay? So, okay, are you gonna do anything while they're coming up? Nope. Okay.
Oh, no. Do this. While they walking up, hands up together. You could, but you have the car now, so my hands in the wheel.
Yeah.
Hands on the wheel? Okay.
Hands on the wheel, sir.
Hands on the dashboard.
You know, my hands. You know why I pulled you over?
No, I don't.
Do you know why?
No, do you have a reason?
Why are you in?
Do you have a reason, sir?
And why are you talking back to me?
Yeah, that's my question.
Whoa, are you getting aggressive, sir? Are you getting aggressive with me?
No, I'm not. I'm just asking you a question.
Well, I pulled you over because you were going over the speed limit, sir.
Have any proof?
Do you have your driver's license and registration?
Yes, I do.
Can I see it?
Going to reach in my pocket. I'll give it to him.
That's fine.
I'm going to reach in my pocket.
That's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chill out. I'm just reaching in my pocket.
All right, I gotta run this. Yeah.
Keep your hands on the wheel, sir.
All right, you checked out. You're good to go.
I bet.
Yeah. Oh, actually,
I
no,
can
no,
do that. I can do that. You already told me I was free to go.
All right, end scene. Awesome. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay. Great job for our actors, audience members. It's your turn now.
But
What?
if they cutting their body camera off, they already breaking the law. You know, so the best thing to do is not let your ego get involved, because if your ego get involved, his ego gonna get involved. Now you got, now he's being ego driven instead of following the rules, and that's how people get shot. And more than likely, 9 times out of 10, that officer ain't gonna get in trouble. So you just gonna get shot and he gonna get off.
And then my one last point was our passenger, again, if you're a passenger, don't say anything, don't try to talk for the driver, don't try to talk to the police officer. Stay quiet, hands on the dashboard, and like, keep that in mind because maybe it's your friend and maybe you're annoyed or maybe you've got these emotions, maybe you're freaked out and you're trying to defend them, maybe you're trying to get them out of getting a ticket. Don't do it. Do not talk to the
Can I ask a
officer.
question?
Yes.
If you're a passenger and say the person in front, driving maybe is elderly, or maybe they don't speak good English, or what would you advise in that situation when they kind of need to speak up?
Sure. So in that situation, if you are, again, in that same position, maybe you will speak for them, but I think if they're, that they may not be in a position to be driving, so make sure that they have the valid driver's license and their license registration if you're concerned about that thing. If you're in a person in the car with that person, like know where all their stuff is. And again, maybe if they don't speak good English, maybe you can speak for them. But also, again, what Mustafa was saying, kind of have a plan with who the people you are in the vehicle with. So if you see that situation, like it can always happen that you may be pulled over. And if you want that person to know, say, hey, if we get pulled over, I will speak for you. You know, if you're uncomfortable with how that might go or how you may be misrepresented. And then also remember that they generally have the right to remain silent. And the only thing that they really have to do is provide that license and registration.
Yeah, so the best thing to do is talk about it with your peer group. Talk about how you're gonna handle a police encounter with your peer group, so that way your peer group already know what to do when it happens. And make sure that y'all not doing nothing that includes a sudden movement that can be perceived as a threat. You don't want them to see you as a threat because they think like military officers. And when military officers perceive somebody as a threat, what do? They shoot. So you don't want to be perceived like that. So y'all gotta have these conversations with your friends. Y'all talk about, hey, if we get pulled over, this what we gonna do.
My last question, is it weird if the officer goes to the passenger side and not the driver's side? It's just one officer.
Say it one more time.
Is it weird?
That should normally happen.
It depends on the circumstance. So like if you're on a highway, they might come to the passenger side.
Okay.
That's pretty,
Okay,
that
makes
is
sense, 'cause
common.
that's where it happened, okay.
Yep, so that is, and I'm not sure what the training is on that, but because you're pulling over to the right, usually, if there's a busy road, they may come to the passenger side.
Right. Okay.
Because otherwise their back is to traffic, which is not.
Usually, I'm just be honest with you, when they come to the passenger side, they're expecting somebody to run. That's like they're doing that so you can't just get out and run. But obviously there's different circumstances, you know, it depends on the circumstances. If you're on a highway, the officer probably don't want to get hit. But I've seen the officers on the driver's side, the sheriff, instead of, you know, on the passenger side, on the highway. I've seen that several times.
Right.
So it just depends on the circumstances. Like, you gotta remember, there's some officers that will follow the rules, but there's a whole lot of them that ain't. You know, so you just gotta be careful. You gotta exercise your judgment. Like you just said, you see somebody cut a camera off, all right, now I know. You know, so like, that's a thing to talk about. Okay, should my friend, if I have a passenger, should my friend already be recording when this officer pulls up? If you by yourself, should your phone be like this, but on record, so they can hear everything that's being said? You get what I'm saying? Like, just think about that kind of stuff. Think about what will work best for you and what you comfortable doing. But these are conversations that need to be had, especially with the level of police brutality that we're hearing about every single day.
So now we're gonna move on and talk about if police is at your school. If police are at your school and let's say there's a situation where maybe a teacher thinks that you're up to something, maybe drug use or another offense, and then they bring an officer in to talk to you. What do they have the right to search? What do they have the right to do?
Do they have the right to search my locker?
Yes.
Yeah, and they can search anything that's school property.
So everything on school property belongs to the school.
Even your personal property on
Your
school
bag.
property can be searched. And another thing to keep
That's
in
a good
mind,
question.
and there's different policies for different schools, right? So that's maybe something that you look up too. But just because the policy is there doesn't mean people will follow
I
it.
got another question.
I used to go to,
What if it ain't even my stuff that's in my locker, and they got their own stuff going on? still going down.
You better
That's
hope
my
that
locker
they,
room.
you better hope that they admit that it's not yours.
Mhm.
But I was gonna say though, when I went to Marshall, man, they used to just bring the dogs in randomly, and they was walking them next to the lockers.
Yeah. So stuff to keep in mind for going into schools. As soon as you enter a school campus or like a school building, a lot of your rights, like private property rights, a lot of that is out, including parking. So if you park on school property, a lot of times we're talking about high schools. There's different policies for college campuses, but on high schools, if you park on those lots, you're subject to those policies, and your car can be searched
Mhm.
without a warrant.
Without a warrant, because that belongs to the school.
And then reasonable suspicion gets kind of interesting on school property too, because they can use your grades or your behavior, or like they can use that as reasonable suspicion to search your bag, search your locker, search your backpack, search your notebooks. So, you know, keep that stuff in mind. You give up a lot of rights going into school. It doesn't mean don't go to school. What it means is know what the policies are and be smart about just know what you have when you're at schools, and then know that your stuff can be searched.
Have any of you guys ever asked y'all teachers what they can do legally and what they can't do legally? Have y'all ever asked an administrator that? That'd be a wise question to ask.
And
just
they
to
also-
see what they gonna say.
They also might not know the answer, okay? And if those school officials don't know the answer, again, we talk about this with the police, like we know the rules, we're talking a little bit about the rules, but what we're really talking about is what you can do, whether or not those rules are being followed, okay? Again, and for searches, say if you get like a pat down search, it should be someone of the same gender. Say they don't know the rules and it happens differently. Keep that in mind, note that, record that, file a complaint.
Did you have a question?
No, I was like, I never kind of asked that question, especially towards my teachers and principals, because I feel like they might try to lie to you.
You
In
know
a way
what?
that's like,
People lie.
Another thing
in
to
a way
look at-
that's like, especially if like you're a troubled student or whatever, they might try to lie to you in an attempt to be like, you as a student, trying to take advantage of that or something like that.
Do you
Right,
have
well,
a,
and-
do you have a smartphone?
I have a smartphone.
Yeah.
The
Well,
other-
that's good to
They have
always.
voicemails.
It's good to always be aware of basic laws like First Amendment, freedom of expression, and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
that's-
It's very-
But
be
also
aware
know
of
that
kind of stuff.
in schools, some of those are
Yeah,
affected.
it changes.
In schools, some of those are affected, and
Yeah,
where you go,
legally, I don't.
But you do
trust
have
it.
freedom of expression in school though.
where you go at the end of the day to get that answer is you're gonna have to go through your school policies. And those policies, a lot of times, like, you can use that. So say the policy says you can and can't do something, like, you can try to change that policy. You can try to say, hey, this is an unfair policy. So that goes into a little bit off of what we're saying, but look at those policies. Educate yourself on what is going on, because the school is like a little society version of the rest of the world, right? So in your school you've got governance, in your school you have enforcement, in your school you have policies, laws within the school, right? So educate yourself on those. Yeah.
So teacher, if you like write, if when I was supposed to experience happening in life, so like, what did you write for if there's an incident, like, for instance, like, all the students like in the line, like, they don't know what's going on?
I don't believe that they have any right they don't have to disclose things to the rest of the student body. But again, look at the policy.
You getting blind about what?
Cause like, there was this one day, I remember this specific, it was like a ray of police officers, cause like, we looking out the window, like, police officers right in the school, like, full AR, assault, like, gloves and everything. They never said anything about what was going on. You just see them just looking out the window.
Well, and that's a school policy thing, and they might even change the policy when that happens to say we're not gonna talk about it. So that is something, and that's something maybe you can request to say, hey, we wanna know what's going on. A lot of times there will be like student council or parent-teacher association or something that maybe would request information like that. But again, within schools, the rules are different, because they have their own governing policies.
So at my school, so if someone brought a gun to school, they put part of the building on lockdown, and then they had their friends come in, because like it was an arrest and he was like an adult at the time, so, and they never like said anything to parents or to the people in the rest of the building, like the whole building wasn't on lockdown. And so like, is that really school by school? Cause I thought that was just like a general policy, like if there's a weapon like in the building, you have to go on lockdown.
There's different lockdown procedures for different schools. So one, I would look at the safety things again that they have, or have conversations with your administrators and be like, why is it like this? And they'll have some answers for you and they'll have some policies for you. But again, question those things, absolutely. Say, hey, why didn't we hear about this? Doesn't this involve our safety? That's a really good point to bring up. And we're gonna move on in a minute, but go ahead.
Question. Why is it not safe to leave a school when it's a code red?
So again, that's policy specific. We won't get into that. There are like specific trainings that you can do of like active shooter trainings that will give you a little bit more information on those topics.
This is you can get in my class.
All right. Again, you have expectation of privacy of your belongings, but there's reasonable suspicion in schools. Your bag can be searched, but they should have a reason. Student lockers, desks, and other storage areas in schools are considered school property and can be searched without consent of the student, so they don't even have to tell you, like you were asking, and without suspicion by school officials. So they can just search your lockers. And if your car is parked on school property, that can also be searched. Another thing that we're going to talk about, because we were just mentioned this in our last 15 minutes that we had, is being during the police encounter, you're like high stress, high adrenaline. Write down everything as soon as possible because you will forget it. Because you are in a totally different physical and emotional state that you will be right after it happens to 10, 15, 20 minutes after it happens. Write it down immediately, put notes in your phone, call someone, have them write it down, get that information down. And then also you cannot be arrested or detained by refusing to answer questions. Again, it might happen, but know that that's within your right.
And that's something that you would write down. If they arrest you anyway, you write that down, right?
Yeah.
And you take note, you go through the proper chain of command and follow, position yourself for a lawsuit.
And again, one last scenario is law enforcement is at my door. You never need to answer the door, but what I say, especially with young people, because I was in this situation, if it's at your house or to have these conversations, right?
Wilson, I was there to try The Offspring. They said that in a song called "All I Want" by The Offspring.
Right. And so, and think about this. This isn't a new problem. There is a lot of music. There's a lot of art there that is calling attention to these issues. So, look at that for inspiration. And again, you can also get involved. So, say this stuff is like something that you're like, hey, you know what? I want to know more about this stuff. I actually want to do legal